You're welcome.
The live stream has started for YouTube. It is 4:59. I am going to start the Zoom broadcast and take us out of preview.
Good evening. It's 5 o'clock now, so I will call the June 9th, 2020 regular school board meeting to order. Before we do anything, let me call the roll to make sure we know who's present at the virtual dais. Board members, if you'll unmute your microphones while I call your names, if you'll just indicate your presence, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Long.
Here.
Ms. Kane.
Here.
Dr. Carr.
Here.
Mr. Dudley.
Here.
Ms. Flowers.
Here.
Dr. Grego.
Here.
Dr. Corbett.
Here.
Mr. Herbeck.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Kapersky.
Here.
Ms. Simonetti. I see her name.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. And I'm Carol Cook. Ms. Lentino is unable to be with us this evening, so any vote that we take will reflect a 6-person vote. Although the restrictions that we put in place due to the COVID-19 are being loosened, in an abundance of caution, we are continuing to hold our meetings virtually so that we may accommodate safely all necessary staff and members of the public. While meeting virtually, we'll attempt to keep our meeting procedures as consistent as possible. However, some changes are necessary. Before we proceed, I want to review our new virtual meeting procedures for those that are listening. We're all in separate locations, but each school board member, as well as Dr. Grego and other district staff who need to speak, will be able to comment as needed. As chairperson, I will continue to lead the meeting and will work through the agenda as usual. Regarding public comment, we've posted our procedures for submitting public comment on our website, as well as published it in the newspaper, but I'll share those procedures for those that haven't seen it. Anyone wishing to submit a comment for any of the speaking opportunities under our policy may do so in one of 2 ways. First, you can send a comment in writing to the following email address: publiccomment@pcsb.org. Second, you may call 727-588-6122 and orally provide a comment, which will be transcribed. All comments submitted prior to the start of the meeting have been sent to all of the board members and the superintendent prior to this meeting. All other comments submitted after the start of the meeting, but prior to the consideration of the relevant portion of the agenda, district staff will strive to immediately send them to the school board members and superintendent. All public comments timely received will be appended to the meeting minutes. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for listening and for their interest in Pinellas County schools, and ask that you continue to support public education, not only during this period, but also after we overcome the current challenges. We will continue to strive for 100% student success now and in the future. So with that, we will begin our published agenda. For our invocation this evening, I would like to welcome Rabbi Philip Weintraub from Congregational B'nai Israel in St. Petersburg. Mr. Weidenthal, would you like to do the invocation, please?
Sure. As a parent, I just want to first thank you for your hard work. My child is a rising second grader at the Midtown Academy, and we've been incredibly impressed at the ingenuity of our teachers and the school to adapt and educate in challenging times. In a diverse school district, I also need to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter, that as a white appearing Jewish person, I know that does not mean my life matters less, but that in this challenging time, we have to acknowledge the pain and loss that African Americans have unfairly had to carry. So now for my prayer. Avinu Shabbat Shemayim, our heavenly parent. The individuals gathered here come together to serve our community. They're here to serve our children. They're here to serve our future. The vision that they share is for every child in our district. May you watch over them and help them make the challenging decisions they have to make. They ensure that so many of our children are fed. They ensure that so many of our children have clothing to wear, that they live and breathe and have a respite, that they have a safe environment. And most importantly, their primary goal is to ensure the education of our children. That is not a light burden. That is a heavy and important responsibility. God of compassion, may you ensure that their decisions are filled with your compassion. May you and they ensure the safety and the well-being of our students so that this generation will grow and bring greatness to our community. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Weintraub. We appreciate your words. Throughout this time of virtual meeting, we've been featuring some of our students and the work that they've been continuing in their routines at home. This evening, we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance along with third grader Kieran Lang and fifth grader Emery Lang from Fugate Elementary School. Following the pledge, we'll have a recording of Lakewood High School senior Tristan Nelson playing the national anthem on the saxophone. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and anthem.
Mrs. Cook, we had an audio issue, obviously, so we were going to try that again if you'd like to.
Good. I was just going to ask if I was the only one that didn't hear it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I thought maybe it was me.
Yep, perfect. If you
I just put a new battery in my hearing aid.
okay, yes. And so if we could do the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem again for Kieran and Emery, as well as Tristan, so that we'll be able to hear them.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
right, that was worth the do-over. They all did a tremendous job. So thank you, Kiernan and Emery, for the wonderful Pledge of Allegiance. And Tristan, thank you for the great job you did with our national anthem. We do have a brief video this evening. Every year, we host the highest achieving African American students at the Verl Davis and Joseph Carwise Achievement Awards. Since we couldn't gather this year, we created a virtual celebration that was shared with our students. The video is available to watch on the district's television station, on the YouTube channel, and on Facebook. While we can't show the entire ceremony this evening, we do have a brief snippet of what was created.
Greetings to the honorees, parents, families, community members, school-based and district staff. I am Dr. Valerie Brim, the Director of the District's Office of Strategic Partnerships and Family and Community Relations. Welcome to the Verl Davis and Carwise Minority Achievement Awards. Due to COVID-19, we are here virtually to celebrate your academic accomplishments. The theme this year is My Future is Bright, and I am ready and prepared for success. Mr. Davis and Dr. Carwise were African American leaders in Pinellas County School District for over 40 years.
I am very pleased that the school system is actually doing this because it shows that it's business as usual, which kids should be about when they are in school. Even though we have the conditions that are going on, we are still continuing with this idea of my husband's, which was his, he was actually convinced that African American students have the ability to achieve, and he expected them to use that ability.
It is a privilege to recognize students for their outstanding academic achievement. It is always an honor to celebrate the academic success of our students, even if we can't do it in person. You, our scholars, truly reflect the vision and values of Pinellas County Schools. Dr. Joseph L. Carwise and Mr. Verl Davis were outstanding leaders in the Pinellas County, and the Achievement Awards named in their honor are designed to recognize and celebrate their work to advance the education of minority students.
We are extremely proud of all of the hard work that you've been able to accomplish, both when we were in a physical building and since we've engaged upon digital learning. I want to speak with you briefly because I know that times have been challenging for you. Not only challenging as it relates to the work that you've been assigned, but challenging because you're not able to make that one-on-one connection with a lot of your schoolmates and your teachers. But we know that through it all, you have achieved. You've accomplished the goals that you set out to accomplish. And so for those of you who will be moving on to the next grade, we are here for you. We want you to know that we are so proud of the work that you've been able to accomplish and the grades that you've been able to receive as a result of that hard work.
As you move forward, you will find that there will be some that doubt your abilities to pursue your dream. But what I would say to you is to ask them to help you. And if they can't help you, ask them to step aside, because you are going to continue.
I believe that all of our students we are honoring today are also leaders. You are leaders in your schools and leaders in your community. You've demonstrated the determination and the commitment to invest in yourselves and your future. And I am so proud of each and every one of you. I'd like to close with a note about this year's theme. My future is bright and I'm ready and prepared for success. Scholars, you are being honored with a Verl Davis or Joseph L. Carwise Award because you do have the skills, the talent, and the grit to build a bright future and to make your dreams come true. I urge you to dream big, because with hard work, everything you dream is within your reach. Congratulations.
Thank you. We are so pleased to be able to carry on the tradition of Mr. Davis and Dr. Carwise and recognize these outstanding students virtually. It was important to let them know that we believe in them and that we are rooting for their future success. Today, now we will move on to the remainder of our agenda, and we'll start with Dr. Grego. Are there any amendments to today's agenda?
There are no amendments to the agenda.
All right, and board members, are there any items that you would like to pull from the consent agenda? All right, I see no hands. So do we have a motion to accept the, okay, Ms. Flowers?
I was just raising my hand to, excuse me, accept the agenda as presented.
Okay, and Ms. Long?
I second.
All righty. So Ms. Flowers made a motion to adopt the agenda and it was seconded by Mrs. Long. I'm going to start now with our roll call vote. So if you'll unmute your microphones. Mrs. Long?
Yes.
Mrs. Kane?
Yes.
Dr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Dudley?
Yes.
Ms. Flowers?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is Carol Cook, and I also vote yes. So we have no, we will move on. We have no special order agenda this evening. And so we move to public comment. We've received public comment via the methods outlined in our public notice and on the district website that were explained at the beginning of the meeting, but there were no comments on agenda items at this time. There were general public comments regarding the reopening of schools and the statements issued by the superintendent and board in support of a unified community. Those items will be appended to the agenda minutes. We have no unfinished business, so we will now move to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve? And I see Ms. Long's hand.
I motion to approve.
Okay, and do we have a second? Dr. Carr.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Once again, we're going to do a roll call. So if you'll unmute your microphones. Mrs. Long.
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes.
Dr. Carr.
Yes.
Mr. Dudley.
Yes.
Ms. Flowers.
Yes, ma'am.
And Mrs. Cook says yes. We now move to the non-consent agenda, 8.1, request approval of a 2-year charter renewal and to change the primary math curriculum at Athenian Academy. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Long?
Motion.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Dudley. Dr. Grego, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. And this item, board members, is for a 2-year renewal, as Mrs. Cook had mentioned. This item was brought to our last workshop by Ms. Lori Matway and Rick Wolf, and I'll ask Lori to introduce this item to the board for your consideration. Thank you. Ms. Matway?
Thank you, Dr. Grego. Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Grego, and staff. As Dr. Grego mentioned, I am here this evening to request approval for the 2-year charter renewal and a change for the primary math curriculum for Athenian Academy. As discussed in the board workshop on May 19th, Athenian Academy opened in the year 2000 in the Clearwater area as the first Greek immersion charter school in the United States. The school opened with fewer than 50 students from kindergarten to 2nd grade and has grown to almost 500 students, kindergarten through 8th grade. I would like to thank Rick Wolf, Amy Hayes, Heather Wallace, Kevin Smith for their review and constant monitoring of our charter schools and their application. At this time, I will recognize Rick Wolf, Director of Charter Schools and Home Education, to give you a brief overview. Rick?
Thank you, Ms. Matway. This is the, as stated, the 2-year request to renew the application for Athenian Academy and change the primary math curriculum. Athenian Academy is one of the oldest charter schools in Pinellas County, and they're located on Hercules Avenue in Clearwater. Normally, we would request a 5-year renewal for charter schools. However, the school did receive a school grade of a C, and therefore, during this process, they did submit a plan to improve student performance. One of the main strategies for improving the student performance was to change their primary math curriculum. According to district policy, that when there's a substantive change to the curriculum, it requires an amendment to their charter application. Therefore, the 2-year charter renewal, that's why we're asking for the 2-year renewal instead of a 5-year renewal.
All righty, thank you. Is there any discussion from board members? All right, I see no hands indicating that. So we have a motion by Mrs. Long and a second by Mr. Dudley to approve a 2-year charter renewal and to change the primary math curriculum for Athenian Academy. We're going to do a roll call. So Mrs. Long.
Yes.
Mrs. Kane.
Yes.
Dr. Carr.
Yes.
Mr. Dudley.
Yes.
Ms. Flowers.
Yes.
And Mrs. Cook says yes also, so it passes unanimously. We now move to new business, items introduced by the superintendent.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Mike Grego. So let me start my comments this evening by recognizing Mr. Gandolfo. I know that Mr. Gandolfo has served as president, as you do also, of our PCTA, served in a variety of different capacities, and this being his last board meeting as a sitting president, I just wanted to reach out to him and briefly communicated to him today. And due to the circumstances of how we're meeting, I was unable to address the board. I'm not pretending I'll do justice to that, but hopefully I will to some way. And just to say to Mr. Gandolfo, thank you for your leadership. As you noticed on the consent agenda on 713, 714, the board did approve the temporary duty elsewhere, TDE, for Nancy Velarde, who will be serving as president of the Pinellas Classroom Teachers Association, and also reissued the temporary duty elsewhere for Nellie Henyas, who serves as the president of the Pinellas Educational Support Professionals Association, or as we know it, PESPA. So I want to thank this group. I want to thank Mr. Gandolfo in particular for his work, his collaboration. I've enjoyed working with him. I certainly will continue to communicate with him, and I'm sure we'll continue a friendship and a relationship for many, many years. With that, I also want to say thank you to him as he's exiting, because I think it is so critical that as we look to the successful reopening of our schools, is that we include the PCTA and teachers along the way, as well as medical professionals and parents and leaders of this community. There's so many groups that we want to listen to, and we are listening to, but I can say to you that no more important than listening to our many, many teachers. And so I will certainly pledge to this board, and I know you do too, that we'll continue to reach out and have focus groups, survey, and really always have the PCTA at the table. Joanne McCall has served and will continue to, as we continue to meet with our medical professionals in the community and think about and how we are approaching the reopening of our schools in August. So that's my first comment, and just to say thank you, Mr. Gandolfo, for your service. The other thing I want to say thank you to is a very successful end of the school year. This is our first meeting after school has been closed out, and thank you to all of our administrators and teachers for having a very successful and different, without a doubt, but certainly successful end of a school year. And this could be a topic in and of itself. It certainly will go down in the history of schooling and education, and certainly in our community. But just to say to this board, heartfelt thanks to your support along the way, all the bumps and the smooth roads included, but it is your support along the way that we have always felt guided and also supported, even during the difficult times. So thank you to each and every board member. Also want to say to our graduating class, we are finishing up our filming of our virtual graduations. I witnessed a few of them down in the conference hall. Thank you to Beth Herendine, Sean Clark, and the entire team. I would like to get a listing of, can you hear me, Mrs. Cook?
Yes, we can hear you. It's a little muffled every once in a while, but we're getting the gist of all of it.
Okay, because I just got a signal on my monitor, your speaker's not working, to check the connection. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, it's working well now.
Okay, I turned the volume up. Okay. So you want me to start from the beginning? No, I'm only joking. Only joking. So our virtual graduations have finished, and now we're going to be in the process of editing for the next 2 weeks. I also want to give the board an update and a community thanks to Spectrum. We had a group go over last Friday. I joined them along with the Department of Health and Dr. Cho's group and City of Dunedin and many others, and to I think Lori Matway, Ms. Bell, a lot of folks joined us. We had a good group, Rita Vasquez, Dr. Vasquez. And so just a really thank you to Spectrum, but really the Phillies who are stepping up to work to host outdoor graduations if necessary. I did communicate with the Rays today. As you follow the news, baseball is still not decided what they're doing, but we're still trying to get at least 2 locations for outdoor a safe venue for graduation. So we should know and be able to try to finalize some of those plans over the next week and a half, hopefully. But you'll probably see this come to fruition when you hear about the baseball schedule. I also want to yesterday was the first day of our summer bridge. Boy, what a success. We had nearly about 10,000 elementary students, about 2,000 middle school students, and we have a number of high school students, about 1,300 who are enrolled for credit recovery and summer bridge. And we also have the ACT prep that begins on June 22nd. Attendance was great the first 2 days, and 22 schools, as you know, as I communicated to this board, are hosting the Art Club and the YMCA programs at sites yesterday too. That's going very well, very slow start, but the ramping up of these programs is going to take some time. But the good news, over 600 teachers participated in professional development last Thursday to prepare for their students. And last Friday, teachers reached out to the students and families to welcome them to their classes for the summer bridge. I'm very excited. I know it's a different format. We're all getting used to these different formats, but I cannot say more positively how our teachers are rising up to the occasion, as the rabbi mentioned, and just really making things work, and students and parents are embracing the effort. And truly, I look forward to an extremely successful summer bridge. I need to say a huge thank you to our teaching and learning division, because they put this summer bridge program together remotely, virtually, to the instructional technology group, to all of the program supervisors, elementary, middle, and high school. They all chipped in to make this summer bridge an extremely robust program for us. I also would like to say thank you to the Human Resources Department, who held a virtual job fair last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Everything's changing, June 3rd through 5th. We had over 100 future educators register for the job fair. I want to ask Ms. Texel to just give the board some highlights, because I'm so impressed, and I want the board to see all that's being done by staff and district staff and school-based staff to continue the processes of our school districts. So Ms. Texel?
Yes, good evening, and thank you, Dr. Grego, and thank you, board, for allowing me a few moments this evening to share absolutely the great things that are going on in HR and the work continuing. And I think that is the most important thing, is as we get ready for our 2021 school year, that our work is continuing. And as Dr. Grego mentioned, we did have a virtual job fair last week. Our principals are becoming experts at running virtual interviews. and they really had a very productive few days last week. We had over 25 offers being made. We still have offers coming in and recommendations being made for candidates to join our team for the next school year. In collaboration with our HR partners, our talent acquisition team worked extremely hard the weeks prior to the event, vetting all the applicants, doing those reference calls. So that work was done prior to the event, so that when when a principal found a great candidate, the recommendation was being able to be made very, very quickly without having to wait to make those reference calls because they had already been done. Those people who were participating last week, we had, as Dr. Grego mentioned, we had educators who were interested in joining our district, but we also had any of our teachers who were still remaining on our transfer list were able to participate, as well as some of our advanced contract binders that our talent acquisition team had already sought out earlier in the spring, just trying to find those matches for those teachers for next year. Our HR department also continues, as I mentioned, to work with our teachers on our transfer list to secure that position for next school year. We have approximately 40 teachers still left on that, and that's typical for year by year. We have already completed our first transfer period as well as a placement event. We are looking forward to a second transfer window that will open up next Monday, and as well as another open hiring window. And as of yesterday morning, we had about 90 vacancies. Again, that is typical for years past at this time of the year. And good to note that 60 of those vacancies are those direct classroom vacancies. So we have about 30 as listed as our non-classrooms, which could be counselors or resource teachers of some sort. Very important, but I think it's always good to find out those classroom vacancies that we have. And so we're monitoring those. And those, of course, are updated daily to reflect those confirmed recommendations, as well as resignations that may occur on a daily or weekly basis. But of course, our main goal is to make sure that we continue to work with all of our schools and our departments to fill 100% of our vacancies for that first day of school in 2021. But I also wanted to point out one thing that we are continuing to also work very hard on is securing bus drivers for our next school year. We have actually just started, or actually on Monday, we will be starting a virtual training class, the 4-week training program for our bus drivers. So I really do have to commend our transportation department for also moving what they can to a virtual format. Obviously, there will be some things that will need to be done in person following all of the guidelines, but they are continuing with that work. We have about 18 to 25 people that will take part in that class that starts on Monday. And then we also have a second class that will be starting on July 8th. And our last thing I wanted to mention regarding transportation and actually all of our maintenance and food service is that we are actually holding another job fair on June 24th at Largo High School for our bus drivers, maintenance, and food service department. And we had one earlier in the spring that was very productive for our system, but we also will be holding another one, maintaining all of the guidelines that we need to in this time that we are in. So again, I appreciate just the few moments to bring you up to date on what HR is doing to support our schools as well as our departments throughout the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Texel, and to the board members. We continue to work on this. We'll continue to provide you updates on this and on the hiring and as we prepare for the next school year. The other topic of conversation I'd like to bring the board up to date with is the status of the Women's Club in Melrose Elementary. As you know, Melrose Elementary, the construction is winding down, and we're looking forward to coming out of this pandemic and being able to gather into whatever safely we can to have a ribbon cutting ceremony. And I want to thank Clint Herbeck and many others. We've been meeting with some officials, Mayor Kreisman, city council members, Lisa Wheeler-Bowman and Gina Driscoll and Deborah Figgs Sanders. And I want to just say thank you to Clint Herbeck. And Clint, if you want to bring the board up to date with any of the progress of the building itself or the Women's Club building.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Grego, and Madam Chair, board members and staff. We're very excited about Melrose Elementary. It's in its final stages of construction right now. The last pieces of landscaping, the last all the touch-ups are going on right now. Furniture is being set up, and we're very excited. It'll be ready to go first day of school in August, and ready to go from when the teachers return as well. One of the things, as Dr. Grego did talk about, is that we have been working, as he said, with some city council members, the mayor's office, and our staff in the facilities department, as well as myself. We're going to start working with the city staff, the City of St. Petersburg staff, on the Melrose Clubhouse, and that's the building that's right there in the middle of the campus. It's a local historic landmark that we purchased from the ladies who ran the clubhouse for many, many, many years. And we purchased it with them. We worked very closely with them to work out the purchase. We closed on that building last May, about a year ago. But one of the things that we did is when we started talking to the ladies about purchasing the building, is we wanted to we wanted to preserve the history of that clubhouse and preserve the memories of the events that happened there through the years. And so one of the things we told the ladies is that if we did buy the building, if they were willing to sell it to us, that we would create a community center in the new school with a separate entrance that the community could use both during the day and still retain the safety and security measures that are in place in a school setting. And the community can also use it in the nights and the weekends. And one of the things we did, we promised the ladies they would get first dibs on the use of that community center. And the community center is built, again, with its own separate entrance, with its own lettering on the outside. It proudly says Melrose Community Center. And one of the other things that we promised them is that if we were lucky enough to purchase the building and build that community center, that we would put a museum quality display in that community center to, again, commemorate the history not only of the clubhouse, but commemorate the history of the ladies and the events and all of the activities that used to happen there. And we are nearing the final stages of that as well. We contracted with a local exhibit designer. She is putting together the final pieces of the exhibit. We're now working with our purchasing department to bring a fabricator on board to build the museum pieces and to display all the wonderful pictures and to tell the story, not only of the clubhouse and again of the ladies, but of the entire Melrose community. One of the other things that we wanted to do, though, is as we start working with the City of St. Petersburg, we definitely want them to know all of those steps that we've taken to, again, preserve the community center and the history. But what we were going to be doing is working with them on a kind of a reuse of the building itself, of the old clubhouse. And one of the ideas that we have is possibly turn it into a bandstand that the community can use to hold concerts and events on the nights and the weekends. So as that work progresses with the city, we will keep you informed. There are no clear-cut answers, no clear-cut solutions yet. It is going to be a cooperative endeavor with us and the city and, of course, the community and the school itself. And again, we hope to start those efforts in earnest in about a week and a half from now. We're just collecting a lot of documents and things right now. But again, as Dr. Grego said, we will have a huge ribbon cutting, grand opening, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully at that time, we'll have the plans of what may happen with that clubhouse down the road at that time as well.
Thank you, Mr. Herbeck. Just a few points of good news. First of all, I learned today that, the Tarpon Springs, the jazz ensemble, they were supposed to compete virtually or with the essentially Ellington Jazz Festival in New York City. They are competing now virtually. So this is an exciting thing. The 25th annual essentially Ellington Jazz Festival will take place. It's going to take place this Friday during a 2 p.m. session. They're going to be 12th, so they're not going to be performing right at 2. But Tarpon Springs will be performing virtually at the essentially Ellington Jazz Festival I can't say in New York, but certainly throughout the United States, people are going to be performing. So we will share with the board the link to this, because you're going to be able to watch live at the by logging into the Lincoln Center website and clicking on essentially Ellington. But we will certainly share with the board and the public to cheer on and to support our jazz band competition. Also encourage the public and to the board. There's still a lot of merit scholarships, library media specialists, a lot of recognition that takes place at the end of the year. So numerous that it's too much to mention, but I do encourage people to look at our website in terms of the awards and recognitions that our students are gaining. I know we're real focused on the situation we're in and we're working remotely, but our students are truly excelling. They continue to excel. They continue to earn scholarships and continue to be recognized, not only statewide, but also nationally. So congratulations to all of them. I encourage you to really look at our website and reflect on the many awards that are gathered by our students, not only music and art, but really throughout all of our subject areas. Board members, just to give you a brief update on the return to work in terms of the summer program. I sent you an up-to-date copy. I sent you at the end of last week a draft as we were finalizing some of this work with our unions and with other folks and with the medical profession. As you know, yesterday, or yes, Monday, Superintendent's Cabinet was the first to come back to work. We've been in this building, and as we phase in executive directors and directors, I shared with you this very thoughtful process of on-ramping people, nothing in a rush, but rather just working with our staffs, working with people over the next 2 to 3 weeks. This Thursday, I'll be having a virtual administrator meeting, kind of like I do once a month with our principals and district leaders, and we'll be having that to just explain the process and also allow in that meeting, everyone can ask questions, and we assemble those questions and we answer all of those questions while we're sitting there. So we're learning from one another. The week of the 15th, then we'll start to ramp on to and populate our schools in terms of the principals, our adult education site administrators and supervisors, kind of ramping on. And then, so we're expecting by the end of this month to have our staffs in full swing, where the staff that's full-time summer staff I'm speaking about, not 10-month teachers who are not under contract. But I want to thank staff for putting together a well-thought-out document that encompasses self-screening procedures, encompasses personal protection equipment, really takes a look at a very comprehensive look, and also provides that compassion that we've been talking about from the very beginning. So I will continue to keep you up to date. We will be working over the next several weeks in terms of focus groups and reaching, as I mentioned earlier, to teachers and to parents, creating surveys to the community as we prepare for the return back to school. We're working with the Department of Education, the Commissioner of Education, FADS, the School Boards Association, and so forth. We will have another meeting scheduled with our medical professionals next week. And our goal is to have something to this board in our July 14th workshop, but we will have it pretty well polished before that, but any last tweaks in terms of what we're looking at there. But we are working daily on this, board members. This isn't something that we're just gonna drum up. This is something that's gonna have to be phased up slowly, carefully, and with a lot of concern of a lot of folks and a lot of listening to a lot of things as we try to, the best we can, to open up school in August. So thank you. The documents you received was specifically, I want to emphasize, was for the summer work and for as we do. And right now things are going very, very, very well. I also want to thank the board for your support and for also authoring the letter of unity for our community in this time as our nation struggles with some of the issues around equity and racism and so forth. So thank you so much. I think the letter said a lot. We had a lot of positive comments back, and I just wanted to recognize this board as a board of support and say thank you for doing that. I also want to send out to this board, because as this brings so much light, I want to thank the board and recognize this district for its several years of its work in equity. I want to share with you, I will in the next day or two, what Hillary Van Dyke put together, just as a synopsis of what this district's done over the last several years with building equity champions, culturally relevant and responsive curriculum and training, and some of the work that we have been doing in restorative practices and so forth. We have an equity champion in every single one of our schools. So this isn't just a thought that we're thinking about the last week or two. This is one that has to really take root and continue to be a part of our active and daily and yearly professional development. In fact, this board just created, and you approved in the job description, the equity development of an equity staff developer specialist. So we're moving well on our way, and I want to share some of those highlights that we sometimes, because we've been in this work the last several years, that we perhaps don't realize. But we do need to continue to make it as much actionable as possible. So thank you. That concludes my comments for today. Thank you, Madam Chair. And members.
Thank you, Dr. Grego. You know, I'm sure I'm not alone in my thoughts that, you know, we're so very pleased with how the work of the district has continued on, and how everyone has just made it work in spite of all the challenges that have been facing all of us. And we are so very appreciative. And I believe if I did not have everybody muted, they would be saying, me too, me too, me too. So thank you, and to you and the staff for a very well thought out past 2.5 months. Mr. Gandolfo, we also want to add the thanks of the entire board for your service. We appreciate what you have done and wish you great success as you move on to the next phase. So our next item would be items introduced by the school board attorney.
Mrs. Cook, I have no items to share this evening. Thank you.
All righty, thank you. And next are items introduced by the board members. Are there any items? All right, seeing no hands, I have okay. Ms. Flowers, let you go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to also echo your sentiments, but I also wanted to just give a super kudos to our Chief of Police, Luke Williams. After all that occurred within our community, not just in Pinellas County, of course, but all over the world regarding the murder of George Floyd and the emphasis on relationships with police departments. I reached out to him because I know that we have, of course, our own police, and we have relationships with the municipal cities and their police departments, as well as the sheriff's office. And the introduction of the 8 can't wait protocols are those things that really would lend to the safety of anyone who may be taken into custody, and the professionalism by which officers act. And while it is true that our students are in a different setting, I just wanted to make sure that we had some policies in place and we're observing some of the detailed processes and protocols that would lend to the safety of our students and staff, but also lend to the additional professionalism of our officers. So I was so excited when he shared with me, not only does he have talks with his officers about the way that they communicate and the way that they interact, he went over it again. And so I'm very grateful for that. And he told me he also checked in with the different municipalities who we have contracts with, where their offices are in our school, to make sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to the safety of our students. So I just wanted to include that in today's conversation, because those students are students who live within the communities where the protests have taken place, and they are certainly aware of what's going on. And I'm sure, as others, want all of them to know that when they're coming, whenever we can come back into our school environment, they're coming back into an environment that is welcoming and one where the police should be looked at as someone that's a helper and a supporter. And so again, super kudos to Chief Williams and all of our officers. I'm very grateful and thankful for that. And I know that prior to school starting, there are a number of professional development trainings and things like that that our staff goes through. But Dr. Grego, I think I may have mentioned this to you when we talked. I just want to make sure that we maybe have that additional little piece when it comes to de-escalation ethics and how we address, communicating about certain things prior to a situation escalating. I just think it's always good and beneficial just to refresh and use it as a reminder. Thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Flowers. Dr. Carr?
Thank you. And Ms. Flowers, thank you for your advocacy in this area and working with Chief Williams. I echo your sentiments in our need for being proactive. I think it was particularly important, and I commend Chief Williams for the work done prior to this, where he was assured that he ensured that all of our folks who were now working at the elementary level, and as well as those as we had a different inclusion model in our middle school level, provided additional training to our school resource officers and guardians in those different levels to make sure they had a greater awareness than maybe some of the external agencies because they were embedded in our school. So thank you, Chief, for that hard work. I also wanted to acknowledge so many of our students who have, so often we say we are proud of them and we hope to engage them with civic engagement, and how many of them have been engaged in this movement, and how proud we are of them for using their voices to bring forward important issues related around Black Lives Matter, and acknowledging the pain and loss of Brown Americans have unfairly had to carry. I also would like to thank Ms. Van Dyke for her work as an exemplar staff developer in the areas of equity, and I look forward to the information that you mentioned, Dr. Greco. And I wanted to acknowledge and express gratitude to those individuals within our staff who've been called up to help support others in different areas of the country. We have many folks who are reserve or guard who have been called up and are working to address and meet the needs of others throughout the country around this pandemic. And I'm grateful to them and happy that some will be returning home soon, and thank those around them who've stepped in to support and complete their duties as needed, which is something we all are expected to do and proud to do as Americans. And best of luck. This is an important agenda always this time of year as we have some shifting of leadership at the school-based level with new assistant principals and retirements. We had big shoes to fill at Diston as well as Pinella Secondary and and Gibbs. So as well as a number of new folks entering as assistant principals. So I'm wishing them the best of luck. I know they're embedded in this agenda, and it's important that you have all of our support as you move forward in your leadership roles. And lastly, just the comments that have been submitted. I know typically in our meeting in this format is a little different. Folks are verbally saying their comments and we hear them. And then at the end, Dr. Corbett, you just say that you'll follow up with some. There are a couple of the comments in particular that have a personal element to them, a particular student concern or an individual concern. And I just want to make sure those get followed up on as we move forward in this different way of work. So thank you for your time.
We will absolutely follow up, Dr. Carr, yes.
Good, thank you. Are there any other items from board members? Okay, I hope that all of you saw the email that came out kind of late this afternoon that Ann sent regarding the election of our FSBA representatives. If you did not, would you push your hand so I can explain it in a little more detail? Okay, I will explain it in detail since not everybody was able to read it, and I do apologize for it going out as late as it did. At our last workshop, we talked about who would be our representatives to Florida School Boards Association for our legislative representative, as well as our representative for the board of directors. The thing that I'm going to talk about today is only the legislative rep and the change to that. Tonight, instead of electing a legislative rep, we will actually be electing an advocacy representative. The reason is in December of 2019, the FSBA membership approved a policy change, and they were restructuring the committee, which was originally our legislative committee with an advocacy subcommittee. And they restructured it so that it would better meet the mission of FSBA. That mission is to increase student achievement through the development of effective board leadership and advocacy for public education. The change was discussed at was supposed to be discussed at the June meeting and made sure that everybody understood very clearly the role that they were going to be taking. But since that has been canceled, they're wanting to make sure that the school boards are making the switch for an advocacy representative rather than legislative, but also make sure that you understood that the job description doesn't change tremendously, just the focus does a little bit. The advocacy committee is going to kind of develop that public relations piece and look at how FSBA can become a better advocate for public education and the students we teach. And the subcommittee that is part of that will also deal with our platform, just like we talked about and I explained when we had our workshop on May 19th. So with that change, we had also talked about, I'm going to step back a second. We had also talked about Mrs. Long being our legislative representative with Mrs. Kane as our alternate. So I want to make sure that both of them are still comfortable with their names being moved forward for our vote. And if not, now's the time to speak or forever hold your peace. Mrs. Long, are you okay and with the name change and the little bit added that I did not share at the workshop of the focus? Okay, you
Absolutely.
are.
Yes.
All right. Ms. Kane, are you still comfortable with being the alternate?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Flowers, your hand is raised.
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to share with the ladies. I had the opportunity to actually chair the advocacy committee 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And really the committees actually did pretty much the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were advocating, of course, for certain positions. We were asking like for calendar events and activities that other school board communities may be doing that we could perhaps piggyback on or maybe replicate. So they really did the same thing. They were just, we were called two different names. And then as chair of the advocacy committee, I was to report, whatever we were talking about or working on to the legislative committee. So really it's essentially the same tasks and responsibilities. I just wanted to share that since I once chaired the advocacy committee.
Right, good, thank you. And the meetings are held at the same time. It is a joint meeting, always has been a joint meeting. It's just that the emphasis when you see the committee title now is advocacy with legislation being a part of that, as opposed to legislation with advocacy being a small part of legislation. It's just a little switch in thought and emphasis. So, are there any other comments about that part of the discussion? Okay, if there are not, then I would entertain well, we can do them both together because a representative to the board of directors, nothing changes with that other than, you know, the people for which we're voting. So if it's all right, I will entertain a motion that we elect Eileen Long as our advocacy rep with Lisa Kane as the alternate, and that we elect Carol Cook to the representative to the Florida School Boards Association Board of Directors, with Lisa Kane also being the alternate for that. Is there a motion? Ms. Flowers, your hand is raised.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we elect Eileen Long with Lisa Kane as the alternate for the Advocacy Committee for the Florida School Board Association, and that we also elect our dear Miss Carol Cook to the Florida School Board Association board as well.
All right, thank you.
Following as the
alternate. Okay. Mr. Dudley?
Second it.
All righty, thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, if there is none, Ms. Flowers made the motion with Mr. Dudley seconding it, that we elect Eileen Long, the advocacy representative, with Lisa Kane being the alternate, and that we elect Carol Cook, the representative to the FSBA Board of Directors, with Lisa Kane being the alternate in that position as well. So if you would unmute your microphones, please, we'll do our roll call. And we'll start with Mrs. Long.
Yes.
Ms. Kane.
Yes.
Dr. Carr.
Yes.
Mr. Dudley.
Yes.
Ms. Flowers.
Yes.
And Mrs. Cook votes yes. So we now have our representatives that are to be elected in the month of June. So we're in compliance. Thank you all very much. Dr. Corbett, are there any requests or board requests that you need to share and remind us?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just had the one request from Dr. Carr that we will certainly follow up on any public comments that were submitted today that require such follow-up.
All righty. Very good. Thank you. And we will move into our board evaluation. And for the public, right after we do this evaluation, we will adjourn the meeting. You're welcome to stay while we do this, but the meat of the meeting is over. But let's start with the evaluation. Is there anything that any board member would like to share with how efficient the meeting was or how the technology worked? We all know that there was a little trouble with the sound, and I'm pleased that they were able to go back and get that. So it's a plus and a delta in that respect. But is there anything else? I see no other hands. I know this is not our last meeting that we'll be using this kind of technology, but I do really want to thank Sean Clark and Beth Herendine for everything that they have done to put this together. And it has moved as smoothly as it has because of them. And I appreciate that. All right, before we adjourn, as a little reminder for the public, the general comments that we received via the email or phone that we outlined in the public notice on the district's website, all of those comments will be appended to the minutes of this meeting. And we have also, as board members, received them and read them. So if there is no objection, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your participation and your attendance.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Have a good day.